Hello and welcome to another Nightgeist Gaming video. I wanted to get a video out for you guys just kind of going over some of the changes that we just received in the Dataslate. I know a lot of people are a bit disappointed, as I am, as far as the Warlock Conclaves. I think that was a bit of a bummer and was a bit disappointed with that, but some of the other changes I understood, and there's a couple I'm actually pretty excited about. And so I hope I have some information for you guys here that'll be a little bit uplifting and hopefully encouraging. And I think there's some pretty exciting things to consider with some of these changes. So let's jump in and kind of take a look at the changes and what it kind of means for us here. And I'm pretty sure most everybody knows the changes, but I'll just kind of rattle them off real quick. We had an increase to the Warlock Conclave when you take the 4-man by 20 points. We had the Fire Dragons go up by 10, Howling Banshees go up by 5, the Autarch go up by 10, and the Warwalkers come down 10, the Fire Prism come down 10, and the Shining Spears come down 10 as well. And so we have some pretty interesting buffs to a few units that weren't seeing much play, and I definitely want to touch on those. But first, let's talk about the Conclave and kind of take a look at a few things and what that might mean for us. And we'll start with a Conclave that's joined into a Farseer Guardian Defender brick. And the numbers I'm going to show is just assuming they either are able to get no cover, your opponent won't have any cover, or we use Fade Inescapable to make sure that we're shooting at them with no cover. Now the numbers at the top are ones that we talked about in the last video across here, and we know that they can do a lot of good damage. I've talked about that a lot, so I don't want to sit here and cover that all again. We do good damage with that unit. A couple things that I want to consider though in comparison is taking the 2-man Conclave but adding a single Warlock on foot. That will give us the bonus defensive buff of causing our opponent to subtract 2 inches from their charge roll. And so when they go to charge this unit, they're going to subtract 2 from whatever that roll is. This is actually going to be pretty interesting, and there's some new detachment the Tyranids have that they're going to be able to do some 6-inch charges. Going from a 6-inch charge to an 8-inch charge is very big. It really changes the math. And just in general, with the opponent, they're going to have to really think about whether they want to shoot us, because if we use Fade Back that we get for free with our Guardian Defenders, having that extra 2 inches off their charge means this unit's going to be much harder to charge in general. And so the Warlock has pretty good synergy with this unit. And it brings in a good bit of damage. And since the 4x Conclave got more expensive, dropping the 2 from that so that we still get the first 2 cheap Warlocks and then adding in the slightly more expensive Warlock is still not too bad, and we're still staying pretty efficient. Now I will say the 4-man Conclave is still more efficient than a single Warlock. If you consider the first 2 Warlocks are 55 points, the second 2 Warlocks are 75, so we're paying 37.5 points per Warlock, and the individual Warlock by itself, the character, is 45 points. So it is, basically 7-ish points more than what we would be paying as one of the Warlocks, even with a 4x Conclave, but it's not that bad, and we're getting a little bit for it. We're getting an extra that minus 2 inches to charge, which is significant. The other thing it does is it gives us a little versatility on what we do at the beginning of the game, because we don't have to attach this Warlock. We can let this Warlock run on its own, and if the opponent has no indirect, and we're maybe feeling like we need an extra screening unit or an extra unit to do mission actions, whatever it might be, we have the option to just run it on its own. So it kind of gives us a little bit of options that we don't generally have when we have just the 4-man Conclave, because it's always going to be going with the Guardians and Farseer. So another interesting thing to kind of keep in mind. And the last option is going to be just the Guardian Brick with only 2 Warlocks with the 2 Warlock Conclave. That is now the most efficient way to get the Warlocks, because it's still 55 points for 2. And we'll look at what that means though. So I wanted to have these damage numbers up because I found it kind of interesting where the break point is. If you look at the Guardian brick right here with the two Warlocks Conclave and then the 1 Warlock added. We're still taking out guardsmen with leaders, a leader squad. We're still killing 10 Gene Stealers, over 8 Marines, or comfortably 8 Marines, doing great work into Chosen, killing 16 orcs even during the wall, doing great into Possessed, easily taking out 5 Possessed, and approaching 4 Terminators, but comfortably taking out 3 and doing a little bit more damage to another, and then still taking out 2 Alaris Custodes. And so those are some pretty big breakpoints because we're actually wiping whole units out. Now, obviously, we're not wiping out a whole Terminator unit, but a lot of these other things we're taking out pretty comfortably, or at least have a good chance of making it combat ineffective. And those are interesting thresholds that I kind of like to see this unit to be able to do. When we drop down and just take the 2 Warlocks in the Conclave, now we're struggling a little bit. We're killing the 20 Guardsmen, but we're not really taking out the leaders that could be there. We're leaving a couple Gene Stealers alive, which, with a bit of bad dice rolling, that could be a few Gene Stealers, and they can do a lot of work into our units, and so we don't really want to be leaving too many of those guys alive. And so that kind of a feels bad there. The Marines, now we're down to only killing 7 on average, again with some bad dice. Maybe there's going to be 4 Marines that could be coming at us still, and it just doesn't feel nearly as good. With the orcs, killing 13, still a lot of orcs coming at us now. They could easily have 7 orcs pushing into us, which is a lot scarier than just like 4. So these numbers just are starting to me, just not quite reaching the thresholds of what I want this unit to be able to do, which is really just clear opponents' units. Same thing with Possessed. Now they're not taking out all 5 of the Possessed. We're probably taking out 3 Terminators. It's not guaranteed. Definitely not nearly as feeling nearly as good as the other 2 situations, and we're not really going to be taking out 2 Alaris Custodes. So it just feels a lot worse to me. These thresholds, damage thresholds, are something to consider when you're making your list. Like you kind of want to have ideas in your mind of what these units are capable of. And for me, I like to kind of know that, okay, I'm probably going to be taking out pretty much all these Gene Stealers, a 10-man Gene Stealer. I'm going to be taking out a large majority of the Marines in that squad. I like to know those things and have that in my head, so when I'm making my plan for what I'm going to do in the turn, I just kind of know these things. And going down to the 2-man Conclave is kind of getting us under those thresholds, but there is something we can do about that I'll talk about here shortly. But I just kind of wanted to show the situation right now and look at the numbers as far as the damage. And down here, I just wanted to kind of give you, I'm not going to talk through them, but just kind of show that the 4x Conclave is doing this much damage to these targets, and the 2x Conclave is going to be doing half. But it just kind of shows you how much of the weight of damage is actually being done by the Conclave and just how good of a damaging unit it is. The 4x Conclave is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in its unit. I mean, it's basically like 2/3 of the damage in most cases, sometimes, at least half. In pretty much all cases. So the Conclave does really good work, does a lot of damage. So just kind of keep that in mind. But we're going to talk about one of the buffed units here as far as the Warwalker. And what this is a Warwalker with 2 Bright Lances shooting a target, followed up by the Farseer Guardian Conclave in the different configurations that we talked about earlier. And so this was kind of an interesting thing for me, at least. I found this pretty eye-opening, and I really probably wouldn't have looked at this too much if it weren't for the fact that the Warwalkers went down in points. Because I've looked at the Warwalkers as a unit themselves, and they're not efficient. They're not very efficient at all for their points. As far as the damage that they do, they're also really not that tough for the amount of points that they were. And so between the lack of damage, the lack of toughness, I wasn't real impressed with them. The fact that they give extra AP is obviously a good thing, and I knew that was a good buff. But I checked it with some things like Dark Reapers and Warp Spiders, and it was like, it's okay, But in almost all cases, I would be better off just taking another Dark Reaper unit as opposed to shooting at it with a Warwalker and then shooting it with Dark Reapers. I kind of saw that I'd have to shoot a target with multiple units before the Warwalker kind of made up for the loss of damage or the damage and efficiency. And so I kind of haven't been considering them, but with the drop in points, I wanted to see how much it helped some of our core units. And so this was pretty amazing. I mean, when you look at with a First Year Guardian 4x Conclave, we're taking out, obviously with Guardsman and Aeldari, that's not really an issue, but the Gene Stealers, we're taking out all 10 and the Broodlord. We're taking out all 10 Marines and probably their leader, if they have like, captain, whatever, leading them. Absolutely wiping it, taking out all the Chosen. we can kill 10 Chosen, which is incredible. I know a lot of people have difficulty with Chosen. This unit absolutely cuts through them. The orcs, even during the wall, we can cut through all 20 orcs. Possessed, we're taking out 8 possessed. Again, another unit that I feel like people have trouble with. 6 Terminators, absolutely melting through Terminators, killing all 5 Terminators and doing damage if they have a leader. Just overkilling even the 5-man Terminator bricks. Feels really nice. We were able to take out at least 3 Alaris Custodes. Probably take out 3 and do damage to whoever's leading them. And so these numbers just looked fantastic. And then even when you go into the heavier targets, I mean, we're taking out Nemesis Dread Knights. We're taking out Doomsday Arcs, Old One Eye, gone. Mutalith Vortex Beast still lives, but he's very close to death. Overkilling Predators, War Dogs, Vindicators. Tranifex is basically gone, doing significant damage in the Norn Emissary. Norn Emissary on a point won't be dead, but we are going to put him at a place where he's definitely not going to want to be shot by much else. And so these damage numbers were just very impressive to me. I was very happy to kind of see just how much synergy there was with the Warwalker in this unit. Now, as we go down the list, obviously the synergy is there, but it helps the Warlocks a lot. And so the less Warlocks we take, the less damage boost we're getting from the Warwalker for those attacks, obviously. But the interesting thing is, I was just talking about how when you only take 2 Warlocks, that the damage threshold goes below what makes me feel comfortable. But with a Warwalker, we are taking out Guardsmen with a leader squad. We are basically taking out all 10 Gene Stealers. We're taking out all 10 Space Marines. Significant damage into basically all infantry. Still taking out 4 Terminators. 2.5 of the Alaris Custodes. And basically, as you just keep going through, we're doing significant damage into everything. Monsters, vehicles, all of it. And this was a really nice thing, again, that I was very happy to see. And the 2 Conclave and 1 Warlock basically is just all that plus a little bit more damage and actually making sure we get the kills on some things like comfortably. And so I really like the Warwalker's boost in damage. And so what I did to kind of get a litmus test is compare it to Dark Reapers. Now there's an interesting thing when you think about the point changes here. The first 2 Warlocks are 55 points. The second 2 are 75 in the Conclave. The Warwalker is now only 85. So for 10 more points, so if we drop our 4x Conclave down to the 2x, and we add the Warwalker, now that is a 10-point increase, but it's only 10 points. The damage that we get is actually a lot of times going to be better, especially into these heavier targets. So if we look back up here, our 4x Conclave into a Tranifex, 8.5 damage. A Vindicator, basically 10. If we go down here, our Warwalker with 2x Conclave, we're doing 13, so 3 more damage to a Vindicator, and 11 in the Tranifex, which is basically 3 more damage in the Tranifex. And more comfortably dealing with some of these targets. And so it actually helps spread our damage to be not so focused on just absolutely melting light infantry, to still dealing with infantry just fine, but also doing more damage into some of these targets that have 2-up saves. And so this was a really cool thing to kind of see. And it made me feel a lot better about maybe dropping down to just the 2 Warlock Conclave or the 2 Conclave and 1 solo lock. So really interesting how the points kind of work out now, where it's only a 10-point boost to take a Warwalker as opposed to the extra 2 Warlocks. And I think there's definitely an argument to do so. But going back to the Dark Reaper comparison, Dark Reapers are 90 points, so they're a nice test for our Warwalkers to see if we're getting good value out of the Warwalker. Because the Dark Reapers only 5 more points is another long-range shooter. I mean, with the Warwalker, we can definitely put a missile launcher on it to get the 48-inch range. And I actually may be taking a missile launcher Bright Lance combo on the Warlocks just to make sure I can apply that debuff to my opponent. And so that is something I'm probably going to be doing in my test games. But when you look at what the Dark Reaper's damage does into targets and compare that to how much damage the Warwalker does into targets, plus the damage that it's allowing our Guardian Brick to do, the extra damage because of the AP buff, that's what this orange numbers are. When we look at the worst case, at only 2 Warlocks in the Guardian Conclave, so that's the worst scenario basically for this Warwalker combo because we have less Warlocks in it, and so we're not giving as many weapons the extra AP buff. But when we look at that and compare it to what the Dark Reapers do, we can see that basically against every unit outside of Guardsmen, Gene Stealers, and the Orc Boys, we're doing more damage than the Dark Reapers. And we're still 5 points less. So that means that we are actually more efficient damage dealers with the Warwalker than we are the Dark Reapers. And Dark Reapers have a good, efficient amount of damage, especially for something that shoots from so far away. And so this was a very encouraging set of numbers to see, and makes me pretty excited about this combination. Now, I do want to talk about a couple positives and negatives here. The Dark Reapers can receive our stratagems. We can Psychic Shield them. We can Unshrouded Truth them, and so there is definitely a positive going to the Dark Reapers for that. However, the Warwalker is faster innately and much tougher and less prone to have to deal with things like indirect fire actually wiping the squad. The Warwalker's probably not going to be taken out by indirect fire outside of a couple pieces that I just don't think you'll really see too often. A lot of people may take some indirect, but usually not things that are going to take out a Warwalker, at least not very quickly. And so there are some things the Warwalker brings, and there's some things the Dark Reaper brings, but I do want to try to take a Warwalker because of the synergy and combo with the Guardian Conclave Brick. I do think the Dark Reapers have a place, and so what I'm probably going to do is you normally run 2 squads of Dark Reapers at 5-mans. I'm probably going to drop one of those and put in a Warwalker to start testing things out and see how that goes. So when we look at efficiency, I just wanted to show this really quickly. It almost doesn't matter whether you take 4 Warlocks or the 3 or the 2 option. We're staying very efficient because at the end of the day, even though the 4x Conclave got more expensive, they do so much damage, and the amount of points that they cost versus the damage that they do is still in favor of the Conclaves. So if you look at the 4x Conclaves, their efficiency, yes, it's higher than the 2x Conclave, obviously, because the 2x Conclave is only 55. We're only paying 55 for the 2 Warlocks, whereas the 4, we're losing some of that efficiency. Now, we're paying a bit more per Warlock, but you can see the numbers here that it still only takes us like 1.5-ish rounds of shooting before we make our points back with the 4x Conclave. And, it's not as good as, a Guardsman with the 2x, we can get our points back immediately, just 1 round of shooting. Whereas the 4x is going to take more than just 1 round. But it's still really good into most every target in the game. It's actually a very efficient damage unit, and I think it's why they increased the points. Now, it is a bit glass cannon, but to get around that, obviously we can put it in with the Guardians to be basically extra wounds for these Warlocks. And so we have a very damage efficient unit, and we are protecting them with our Guardians, and the Guardians are also being protected by the Warlocks with a -1 to wound. So there's a lot of synergy with this unit, and even with the price increase, this is still going to be a good unit. You're still going to get really good value out of taking the 4x Warlock Conclave. So don't think that they absolutely killed it. It did go up in price, but it's still a very efficient unit. That's pretty much what I just wanted to point out by showing you those numbers there. One thing I did want to point out, because I thought it would be a good thing for you guys to know, this is just really doesn't have to do with the update. I just wanted to show this to you in between the 3 different options, what overwatching with the Seer Guardian Conclaves will do. Now this is just them overwatching. There's no buffs, there's no innate buffs that they're getting for this damage. This is just Overwatch. And so when you Overwatch, you're doing a lot of damage into a lot of targets. And I just kind of want you to think a little bit about, we're willing to spend a CP to do on average 3 mortal wounds with the grenade stratagem. And if you look at some of these numbers with the Guardian 4x Conclave, almost every target we're going to be doing more than 3 damage to, outside of just a couple. And so this Overwatch is going to be more efficient than grenades basically all the time. Even when we go down to just 2 Conclave, we're still doing a lot of damage into most all the infantry and the light vehicles. So it feels pretty good to Overwatch with this unit, even when we go down to the 2x Conclave. I do want to point out an important threshold consideration here though. And this is again why the first year Guardian with 2 Warlocks and the solo Warlock together is intriguing to me, because when you look at just the 2x Conclave, we're not quite killing 10 guardsmen. We're not quite taking out the whole, Eldar aspect unit. We're killing 5 of them, but we're leaving that Exarch on like 1 wound. And that thing, it can hurt. We know this. We're killing 4 of the Gene Stealers. We're just leaving, 1 alive on that 5-man. We're killing, just a couple Marines. So I don't like the thresholds of the first year Guardian with 2 Warlocks. The Overwatch isn't as good, and the normal attack without support also is just not hitting the thresholds that I want to see. But you can see here with just by adding 1 more Warlock, we are taking out 10-man Guardsmen. We are taking out, on average, the 5-man squads of Eldar. We're taking out 5 Gene Stealers. We're taking out 3 Marines, which I know it's not all 5, but 3 is definitely better than just 2. And it also puts them in range of being taken out completely with Isha's Fury. So if we roll average dice, we take out 3 Marines, and we can also do Isha's Fury immediately along with that. And then we could take out the other 2 with Isha's Fury. So we did just take out the 5-man there. And that's why that 6 damage is actually an important threshold in that situation. Now we are very close to taking out 10 orcs, which again, taking out a 10 block of orcs feels good compared to only like 7. So there's a lot of these thresholds where just taking the extra Warlock feels really good. Like it pretty much guarantees that we kill a Terminator, whereas with the only 2 Warlocks, like yes, on average dice we take out 1, but it's basically a 50-50, whereas with the extra Warlock, we're much more likely to actually fully take out at least 1 Terminator in Overwatch. So, this is looking better to me, and kind of what I'm leaning towards currently when I'm looking at making my list. Swooping Hawks. I know this unit didn't change, but since the Warwalkers did, I wanted to show how the Warwalkers affect the damage with this unit, because Baharroth and 10 Hawks, I went over last time, they don't have great damage. When you look at the fact that they're a 285 point unit, and they're killing, a single Terminator with a little bit of damage into another one. Terminators are like 35 points a piece, so you're doing like 50-ish points of damage to your opponent. Like you're never going to get the value out of your Hawks by just shooting at a lot of things. Now you might be better off shooting if you can, if you're going to Guardsmen, but you can run into plenty of armies that don't have targets like that, like Gene Stealers and Guardsmen that the Hawks love to shoot at. And a lot of people think with lethal hits, oh, it's great for, shooting at, some vehicles and things. And yes, you can do some damage, like some okay damage into Predators. But when you think of the fact that Predator is 130 points and we're doing just over half of its wounds and damage, I mean, we're doing like 65 to 70 points worth of damage to our opponent, it still just doesn't feel very good, and it's going to take you a while to get the value out of the Hawks. So when we look at what happens when we shoot a Warwalker into a first, and of course this damage, both of these include Fate Inescapable, by the way, both the top and this one here, but this one down here includes a Warwalker shooting first. So now they all get AP1, or better, of course, in the case of Baharroth and the Exarch. We are wiping Guardsmen, we're destroying 10-man Aeldari units, we are killing most of the Gene Stealers in a 10-man brick. We're killing 7.5 Marines. 5 Chosen basically are gone. 10-man bricks of Orcs gone. And 3 Terminators now. Much better. 2.5 Alaris Custodes, which is fantastic. I feel like for a unit that generally is known to be scary for light infantry, now we're punching up into the heavy infantry and doing significant damage. 10 damage into a Nemesis Dread Knight, 10 damage into a Mutalith Vortex Beast. That one was really nice to see. Taking out Rhinos, killing the Predators, killing War Dogs. Another unit that can kill a War Dog. We have our Guardian Defender brick. We have our Swooping Hawks now with a Warwalker. Obviously Fuegan and Fire Dragons. All of a sudden we're starting to push and destroy 3-4 War Dogs a turn. We can actually get through all those Knights, which feels pretty nice, doing significant damage into the Vindicator and Tranifex. So these numbers just, in a lot of cases we're doubling our damage, and I kind of talked about it more in last video, so I'm not going to harp on it on this one. You can go watch that video if you want to see a little bit more about the numbers and how important like armor penetration is and +1 to wound is and things like that. But +1 to wound would only make all these numbers even better, obviously. So these are very nice damage numbers, though. The extra AP works really nice with our lethal hits. So the Warwalker loves helping out our Hawks, and so now we have multiple units the Warwalker can help, which makes me feel a lot better about taking a Warwalker. Because again, the Dark Reapers are doing their damage without any combination. And so it's kind of like, if you took a Warwalker and Guardian Defenders and you lost those Guardian Defenders, all of a sudden that Warwalker isn't very valuable, whereas that Dark Reaper squad's always going to have value. But if we have multiple units that really like that buff from the Warwalker, all of a sudden that Warwalker is going to be much more efficient for us, because even if we lose a Guardian squad, well, we can just start comboing with the Hawks. It's going to feel really nice. Another thing I just want to point out too, that these numbers don't include the Hawks using their grenades ability. So you drop these Hawks and do 5 mortal wounds first, and then add this damage on top of it. So basically you drop your Hawks, do your mortal wounds, shoot the target with a Warwalker, and then shoot it with your Swooping Hawks, and you can actually take out a lot of units in the game. Nemesis Dread Knight on average dice is gone. Mutalith Vortex Beast is very close to being taken out. Tranifex is going to be on death's door. Vindicator is gone. And so again, we are doing real damage now with the Hawks, which to me is exciting, because I've always kind of felt like the Hawks have failed me in a lot of games where they just can't quite do the damage I need them to do, and they're very squishy, so if anything does get a beat on them, they're pretty much being taken out super easy. And so being able to get a lot of value out of them in just one round of shooting, between shooting and their grenade ability, I think is going to make them feel fantastic. So I'm really excited to take the Warwalker and use it with them. And down here again, you can see the Warwalker's damage that it was able to bring to the table compared to what Dark Reapers do into the same targets, and the Warwalker wins again in pretty much all these cases, except for just a select few. And so I think it's going to be a great combo. As far as Overwatch, I wanted to point this out too, because I talked a little bit about it with the other unit, but the Hawks actually don't have great Overwatch. Not too good of damage, but I will say if you do have your aspect tokens, you can use that on your Hawk's Talon or Baharroth, whichever one doesn't roll as many 6s, and probably get 3, 4, 5 damage on average into most targets. So if there's something you absolutely want to shoot, and it's really important for you to get that 4 or 5 damage onto a target, and you don't have something else like warp spiders or the guardian squad to be able to overwatch it. I mean, obviously go ahead and use the hawks, but I just want to point they're not as good as I think some people think they are. Even with 10 hawks, because they have no AP, they're just don't actually get as much damage into the targets on Overwatch as maybe you might think, and so I just kind of wanted to put this in here just to kind of put that in your mind. Efficiency, I just thought these were interesting numbers real quickly because, again, Baharroth and the 10 Hawks don't have great efficiency. You can see this number up here. But when you add that Warwalker, who also doesn't have very good efficiency, but when you combine them together, they actually synergize and their efficiency goes up significantly. And so we're looking at much better numbers in all these targets. And there's two things I want to point out with this. Like, this doesn't look as good as some of the other units we've seen as far as like the Guardian or Conclave, and the Troop and Troop Master that I showed in the last video. But for one thing, we're doing this at 24 inches away with the Hawks and 36 inches away with a Warwalker. So we're doing this a much safer distance. So that's the first thing I want to point out. The second thing is this does not include, again, the grenade ability from the Hawks. If you were to include the grenade ability from the Hawks and then look at this efficiency again, there'd be a lot of cases where you're actually under 2 by a good margin. We're actually approaching 1. And so I don't have a way in my algorithm to be able to kind of like show that. But just know that if you took the extra 5 mortal wounds on average that you get from the Hawk Bomb, I guess we'll call it, these efficiency numbers would look very good, especially on some of these like tanks and monsters. It would start pushing it to that, just in one round of shooting, you're going to get your points values worth of points from both the Swooping Hawks and the Warwalker. It would get close to just one round of shooting. So very nice numbers, actually. So even though this doesn't look quite as nice as some of the others, was missing a couple pieces, and it's actually a very efficient unit now. And so I'm excited for them as a damage unit, not just a support unit, as I felt like they kind of were before. They just kind of come down, do a little bit of extra damage to help something that may not have been able to finish something else off. Now they're doing real damage, and between the Warwalker and them, they can really punch into just about anything in the game, which is super exciting. Fire Prism. This one's pretty quick and simple. 150 points now. It's cheaper. The damage that it does is pretty good into monsters and vehicles. I mean, it's 8 damage into some of these things, 7, 6 into some of these others. Not bad damage at all. And this is assuming, of course, that they have cover, and I'm only shooting the main cannon. This doesn't include the shuriken cannon. So when we look at efficiency, and I did change it so that I'd be using the blast profile into like the light infantry and stuff, but even with that, still not very efficient into infantry very much, like kind of okay into Gene Stealers, kind of okay into Lars Custodes, but other than that, not great into infantry, even with blast profiles. But when we look at vehicles and monsters, we're starting to get under 2 in some of these cases, or right around 2. So basically in 2 rounds of shooting, you can get your points value for the Fire Prism, which basically means you're doing about 75 points of damage per shooting with the Fire Prism. But when you consider how far away the Fire Prism's shooting at, and you can take very tight angles and keep it in your back line, doing screening, keeping your deployment safe, it's actually not a bad thing to kind of consider. But I just want to make a few points because you have the numbers in front of you here. The Fire Prism isn't going to usually kill a target when it shoots at it by itself. So I think that's something that maybe either bothers people, or they don't like when they see that, like, oh, I have my big Fire Prism, I'm shooting your tank, oh, I didn't kill your tank, I never kill your tank. Well, you shouldn't expect to. You should be able to, you should be expecting somewhere between 4 and 6 damage, like on average, But just know that as long as you can shoot the Fire Prism at least twice into your opponent's like tanks and monsters, you're almost definitely going to be getting its points value of damage into your opponent. And so that should hopefully make you a little happier about considering using the Fire Prism. Now, I personally am only going to take 1. I don't think you have to take 2. The linked fire is neat, but it's really hampers the average damage and the efficiency of the Fire Prism. And I actually think it makes it harder for you to get the value of the Fire Prism over the course of the game if you're taking a second and it's only shooting one shot through the other Fire Prism. And so I think you take one and you fade back when you get shot and try to keep it safe. Maybe don't put it out there when they have a Gladiator Lancer ready to shoot it. If you're careful with it and you make sure you get at least 2 good rounds of shooting with it, it should do good work. And so I think taking one makes sense, especially in Seer Council. We're pretty much always going to be taking Fuegan and at least 5 Fire Dragons. My concern is if you take Fuegan and 5 Fire Dragons, now you're adding a Fire Prism that's basically only efficient as an anti-tank weapon. Now you're getting to the point where you're approaching, that 400 points-ish of units that are anti-tank. Or if you take the 10-man Fire Dragons at plus Fuegan, plus a Fire Prism, now we're approaching that 500 point threshold where it's like 25% of our army is really just anti-tank and not too good at other targets. If you run into an opponent that only has, one vehicle, one monster, maybe none at all, some lists, you may find yourself struggling a little bit to do enough damage to the other types of targets, so lots of infantry or something like that. And so I think you have to be careful about skewing too heavy into anti-tank, and that would be my concern by taking a second Fire Prism. Now you have 300 points in Fire Prisms. You're obviously going to be taking Fuegan and Fire Dragons. You're really starting to put a lot of points in anti-tank, and I think we have to just be very careful about that. And so I would only recommend trying one or taking one, and at least that's what I want to be doing with my own list. So when I go to try out the Fire Prism, I'm just going to be taking one because I think it's a decent piece of decent vehicle. It'll make your opponent keep their heads down a little bit. They're not going to feel quite so brave possibly with some of their monsters and vehicles just put out in the open because they know you have something that can hit it hard. And so it'll make your opponent play a little more honest and can do so from a long distance. So I think it is an interesting unit, and it may have some play now that Fire Dragons, like 5-man's one up. I think they're definitely a consideration to take and bring something a little different in your list to be able to get some anti-tank at a distance. And so yeah, I think it's a neat unit. Lastly, the Shining Spears and Howling Banshees, kind of throwing them together. Howling Banshees went up 5 points, Shining Spears went down 10. That means they're only 15 points apart. If you look here, I just basically wanted to point out the Shining Spears actually do more damage than Howling Banshees in basically every target, especially when you get outside of infantry. So basically, everything from here on, the Shining Spears are doing way more damage than the Howling Banshees. And if you look at the efficiency of points, the Shining Spears pretty much beat the Howling Banshees in every case. Even into infantry, you'd think that the Howling Banshees would have a good chance of being more efficient into infantry, but actually the Shining Spears do more damage and are more efficient in most all cases into even infantry, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, a couple things to kind of consider, what does that mean exactly? Well, the Shining Spears are going to be a better assault unit. It's going to be great for moving out, shooting all their weapons and charging in and doing good damage. They're going to actually do more than the Howling Banshees. And that's why I think you see Howling Banshees often taken with like an Autarch or a Jane Czar, because Howling Banshees just don't quite wipe units. They, don't kill 10 guardsmen. They don't kill 5 Gene Stealers. They don't kill 5 Marines. They come just short of taking out units. And so by having the Autarch or Jane Czar with them, that just makes them comfortably take out a lot of those things that otherwise they wouldn't. Now the Shining Spears, on the other hand, when it comes to like the infantry side, they are taking out 10 guardsmen. They're taking out aspect warriors, 6 damage exactly. So it's a little bit 50-50, but they're doing pretty good. They're taking out 5 Gene Stealers, 5 Marines comfortably, and almost 3 Terminators, whereas, the Howling Banshees are only taking out 2. So the Shining Spears are actually going to be better at getting places and cleaning up than the Howling Banshees, and only for 15 more points. Now the Howling Banshees are going to be much better at defense, obviously with heroic intervention being a thing. Their fights first, they're going to be significantly better at protecting our units than the Shining Spears. So I think the Shining Spears should be looked at as a assault unit to go and clean up. I don't think you want to send them into max units or units that are full wounds, because they're just not going to kill them. I mean, they don't even actually, on average dice, take out a rhino, which I know annoys some people, but you know, it is what it is. I mean, and as long as you know that and know what to expect, just don't expect them to go and take out the rhino. Expect them to not quite do it. And so give them a little support. You know, take some shots into the predators, get them down to 4 or 5 wounds, and then watch the Shining Spears go in and finish them off. And I think if you just have that in mind, you'll have a lot more success with the Shining Spears, and just know that they're not going to kill the vehicles and monsters in one go most of the time. I mean, obviously there's always a chance with dice, but they're generally not going to. And they're really only going to wipe small squads, you know, 5-man, you know, Marines and Eldar, and only 10-man guardsmen. Like, don't expect them to go in and just wipe out, you know, 8-9 Marines, because they're just not going to do that. So keep this in mind, and I think you'll have a lot more success with the Shining Spears. And just can kind of consider that they are more efficient than Howling Banshees. Like, as long as you can move them up, get their shooting off, charge in and fight, you know, they're going to almost get their points value in that first attack. Now, not quite. You can see here that they don't quite get their points value in one attack. And that's what I think people find hard with them, is they just don't quite get their points value in when they go in and fight. And usually if they get killed on the hit back, because they are pretty squishy for their points, and their base sizes are big, so they're kind of hard to hide. I think those are the main downsides of the Shining Spears. But if you keep them back, they have very long range. They have the ability to go up. And if you can use them in a way to where they can just go clean up a flank where they're not going to get hit back so hard, and you can get at least 2 attacks with them, pretty much if they attack twice into anything, and by attack twice, I mean getting all their shooting off and all their melee, as long as they can do that twice in a game, they pretty much are guaranteed to get their points values worth of damage into your opponent. I mean, you can see here from their efficiency, a lot of times significantly more than their points value. I mean, if you can go and have them finish off a predator and then go charge another predator and do full damage, they will get their points value. And so just maybe keep that in mind, and that might help you use them. I'm definitely going to be trying out a unit of them in one of my lists in the future. But if I had to put it in order, I think I'm most excited about the Warwalker and that synergy with the list. And then maybe the Fire Prism actually after that, and the Shining Spears kind of last. Because, I don't know, I'm kind of excited to use the Fire Prism. But the Shining Spears do have good synergy with how we like to play Seer Council, or at least how I like to play Seer Council, which is very fast units that are very efficient into a lot of things that our opponent might have, a lot of different units, and the ability to have a lot of different things taking out my opponent's units, and being able to focus my firepower in one area of the board to just absolutely clean it up. And the Shining Spears actually play into that very well. And so I think they definitely could have a place in list in Seer Council. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, and these are the units here. This is all the information, and obviously feel free to go back and pause the video, look at some of the data. You know, again, this is a little bit of a heavy data-driven video. I am working on the next video that's going to be covering more of the tactical strategic analysis, you know, deployment. But with the new missions coming out and a few things that I've been wanting to try, it kind of pushed that video back a little bit. But that will be coming out, and I know there's been people been asking me about that. But that is something I want to make sure is very valuable and very much worth your time. I got a lot of good feedback on the first video I did with Seer Council, like the deep dive portion, and I want to make sure this next video is going to bring just as much value and hopefully help everybody with playing Seer Council better. And so that's why I really want to put the time and effort and testing to make that video as helpful and valuable to you as possible. So let me know in the comments about what you thought of these units and some of these ideas, maybe what you're most excited to try, or if anything at all. I don't know if some people are looking at this the same way as myself. I don't know if anybody really thinks the Warwalkers are going to be valuable or not. I'm definitely interested to try, but you never really know until you actually get them on the table and give them a shot. And so I really like trying things out. I encourage people to try things. and not just assume, because on paper they can look one way, but when they actually play them in the game, they can feel a lot better or worse than you would expect. And so let me know in the comments what you think, and I will be posting my list and keeping up to date on my Patreon. I just want to mention a couple things about the Patreon. My list is available to anybody for free, as long as you just join as a member, like even as a free member. So if you want to see what I've been working on and what I've been taking, and see my up-to-date kind of like meta list that I've been using, the Patreon is a place to do that. And of course, if you want to support what I'm doing here and trying to make Aeldari content that's useful and valuable to players, beginners, intermediate, and even high-level players, I really want to push the competitive level of Aeldari and see them have a good win rate, as much as some people may think that we may not have the best win rate coming forward with some of these nerfs. But I think we have the ability to do great, and I think the army is actually very strong. It's just very difficult to play. So even if our win rate may not be the highest, I actually think our army is very strong. It just takes a lot of practice, and it takes a good understanding of the units, and that's what I'm trying to do with some of these videos, is hopefully just help people understand their army better, understand their units better, so that we can do better and win more games, keep our win rate up, and show everyone just how strong the Aeldari are. So let me know in the comments what you thought about all this. And again, if you want to support, check out the Patreon. I want to just say a quick thank you to the Patreon members that are paying. I really appreciate your support, and it is being put to use to I'm trying to get more and more things prepared and set up to be able to do better videos. And I appreciate all the feedback and support from everybody. The community's been very encouraging. A lot of people have had a lot of great things to say, and I really am glad to hear that people are enjoying these videos and getting value out of them. So that's great to hear. I love to hear it from you guys. So just definitely let me know in the comments, do all the YouTube stuff, the like, share, subscribe, all that. Appreciate it so much. We're approaching 500 subscribers, which is great, which is a lot more than I ever expected when I started all this. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.